I think it's very important that tradition stays, and tradition has a huge part of all this. But there's also points where you look at tradition and go, is that still fit for purpose today? Is that still the right thing to do? Are we still doing and having the most impact we could be having?
Prince William's face reportedly changed the moment the royal guard showed him what had just been removed from Camilla's son's vehicle. One palace officer would later describe the atmosphere in a single word: frozen. Not because anyone had expected to find something dangerous, but because nobody expected to find those items there. The discovery happened during what should have been an ordinary security check. Within minutes, guards were securing materials. Senior officials were being contacted. Phones were ringing behind palace walls. And according to royal insiders, William made it clear that the matter would not be quietly dismissed simply because of who was involved. The shocking part was not that the items had been found. The shocking part was that some of them allegedly appeared connected to sensitive palace business. Business that should never have left protected royal channels. Business that immediately raised uncomfortable questions about access, oversight, and trust. As word quietly spread through royal circles, one question overshadowed every other. How did those materials end up inside Camilla's son's car? Because the answer, according to insiders, would eventually lead investigators far beyond a single vehicle inspection.
How would Prince William have been told to, and how would he have handled their private dinner last night, do you think?
Well, firstly, don't in any way forget that His Royal Highness would have been extremely well briefed. I was lucky enough to accompany the Prince of Wales, as he then was, on 3 visits to the Middle East, and he was very well briefed.
It would reportedly uncover missing records, unexplained movements, private meetings, and a timeline stretching back months before that morning. And the deeper William looked, the more troubling the picture became. Before we go any further, there is something worth asking. If you discovered that a member of your own family was connected to something that could damage everyone's reputation, would you expose the truth or stay silent to protect them? If you believe Prince William was right to demand answers no matter whose family was involved, take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this video. Many viewers believe that staying silent is exactly how situations like this continue unchecked. Every like, every share, and every subscription sends a message that royal rules should apply equally to everyone, regardless of status, title, or family connection. Hi viewers! If you were standing beside Prince William that morning and saw what the royal guard had just uncovered, would you support a full investigation, or would you want the matter quietly buried? Type investigate or hide in the comments. What happened next may explain why Prince William reportedly decided this situation could no longer remain private. A royal guard did not raise his voice that morning. He did not run across the courtyard. He did not call for reinforcements. He did not create a scene. Instead, he stopped walking. That was what made everyone else stop too. The black vehicle had arrived only minutes earlier at a private entrance connected to Clarence's house. It was not unusual for family members to come and go. It was not unusual for senior staff to move through the grounds without attracting attention. What was unusual was the expression that crossed the guard's face as he completed a slow circle around the vehicle and paused beside the rear compartment. Something was wrong. Not obviously wrong, not enough for a visitor to notice, but enough for a man whose career had been built on noticing small things. The rear suspension sat lower than expected. The vehicle appeared heavier than it should have been. And according to the security system, no advance clearance request had been submitted for its arrival. The guard requested an immediate inspection. What happened next would reportedly trigger one of the most uncomfortable internal reviews the royal household had faced in years. Before this story goes any further, there is something worth asking. If a royal family member's relative arrived at a restricted palace property carrying sensitive materials, should they be treated exactly the same as any ordinary visitor? Hi viewers, if you discovered that someone close to your own family had broken an important rule, would you tell the truth about it or stay silent to protect them? Comment yes if you would tell the truth, or no if you would protect them. The answer to that question sat at the center of everything that followed.
I hope we don't go back to some of the practices in the past that, Harry and I had to grow up in, and I'll do everything I can to make sure we don't regress in that situation.
It sounds like the monarchy will be shifting in a slightly different direction.
Because by the time Prince William stepped into that courtyard, the issue was already larger than a routine security inspection. It was becoming a test of loyalty, a test of accountability, and perhaps most importantly, a test of whether royal rules truly applied equally to everyone connected to the monarchy. The morning had begun quietly. Staff moved between buildings carrying folders and schedules. Garden workers tended flower beds near the outer grounds. Security personnel rotated through their normal assignments. Nothing about the atmosphere suggested that within the next hour, senior palace officials would be exchanging urgent calls behind closed doors. The vehicle belonged to Tom Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's son. Unlike working royals, Tom maintained his own career and public identity outside official royal duties. His visits to see his mother were not unusual. The problem was not who he was. The problem was what appeared to be inside his vehicle. The guard approached respectfully. Those nearby later described the interaction as calm, professional, routine, at least at first. The request was simple, a standard inspection, nothing more. Tom reportedly hesitated, not dramatically, not aggressively, just enough for the moment to change. Witnesses later recalled that he explained the contents were private papers and personal materials. Nothing dangerous, nothing requiring concern, nothing that justified additional attention. But palace security procedures were not built around preference. They were built around protocol, and protocol did not make exceptions. The guard remained firm. The inspection would proceed. As the exchange continued, staff members began slowing their pace. Conversations became shorter. People who had no reason to stop suddenly found reasons to linger nearby. Years of palace experience had taught them something valuable. When security officers become unusually focused on a visitor, it usually means a larger story is unfolding. Inside Clarence House, Queen Camilla had not yet been informed. She was reportedly occupied with private morning business when word reached her that security officers had requested additional checks involving her son's vehicle. She stepped outside. What she saw immediately told her this was no ordinary delay. Several guards were now present. Staff members stood quietly nearby, and at the center of it all stood her son beside the vehicle. The atmosphere had shifted. Nobody was smiling. Nobody was relaxed. Nobody appeared eager to explain what was happening. Then another vehicle entered the courtyard. The arrival changed everything. Prince William stepped out. No announcement, no advance warning, no public display, just a quiet arrival that instantly altered the balance of the situation. The guards straightened, conversations stopped. Several staff members exchanged nervous glances. William looked from the vehicle to the officers, then toward Camilla, then toward Tom. He listened carefully as security personnel explained what had happened so far. The report lasted less than a minute. Those who observed the scene later claimed William asked very few questions. He did not need many. Years of royal life had taught him how quickly a small security concern could become a major institutional problem. When the briefing ended, he gave one instruction. The vehicle would be inspected immediately. No delay. No exceptions. No private arrangements. No alternative process. The inspection would happen now. Silence settled across the courtyard. The rear compartment was opened. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Even years later, palace insiders would reportedly remember that silence more clearly than anything that followed. Because the moment the compartment opened, attention shifted from whether there was a problem to how serious that problem might be. Inside were multiple boxes, several folders, bound documents, sealed packets, and materials that immediately attracted the attention of security personnel. Nothing appeared dangerous. Nothing resembled a weapon. Nothing suggested a threat to physical safety. Yet the reaction from those present made it clear that something else had triggered concern. The materials appeared connected to internal palace operations, sensitive administrative records, restricted briefing documents, correspondence that should not have been moving through private channels, at least according to the preliminary concerns raised that morning. No public inventory was ever released. No official statement confirmed specific contents. Many details would later become the subject of speculation.
It's an important deployment. The monarchy means a great deal, obviously, in Saudi Arabia. It's a different system to ours. There's monarchical rule in Saudi Arabia, where there's a constitutional monarchy in the United Kingdom. But both Prince William and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia are both Crown Princes, heirs to the throne.
But one fact reportedly became impossible to ignore. The materials required answers. William's expression changed. Not dramatically, not enough for cameras, but enough for people standing nearby to notice. The inspection stopped being a security matter. It became an investigation. Instructions were issued immediately. The contents would be secured, access would be restricted, documentation would begin at once. Nothing would leave the area without authorization, and most importantly, no one would discuss the matter publicly. The decision was made within minutes. The materials would be transferred for private review. What happened afterward would occur behind closed doors, away from cameras, away from reporters, away from the public. But the discovery itself had already raised a troubling question. If these materials truly belonged within protected palace systems, how had they ended up inside the vehicle in the first place? That question followed William as he departed the courtyard. It followed security officers as they filed preliminary reports. It followed palace advisors gathering in private offices throughout the afternoon. And it followed Queen Camilla herself as concerns spread quietly through royal circles. Because long before investigators could determine exactly what had been found, another possibility had begun taking shape. What if the discovery was not the beginning of the story? What if it was the end of a process that had started months earlier? And what if someone inside the palace already knew far more than they were saying? By nightfall, William had ordered a deeper review. The contents of the vehicle were now secured. But the larger mystery was only beginning, because hidden within the records connected to those materials was reportedly a timeline that stretched back far beyond that morning. A timeline that would soon lead investigators toward missing documentation, unexplained access requests, and a chain of decisions that nobody expected to uncover. And when the first security logs were finally examined, one detail immediately stood out. A detail so unexpected that it forced investigators to ask a chilling question. Had someone been quietly moving sensitive palace materials for months without anyone noticing? Prince William did not sit down. He stood over the long oak table in the secure basement office of the Sovereign Archives, his eyes fixed on a single line of illuminated text on a dark monitor. Timestamp: October 14th, 2:23 in the morning. The room was cold, chilled by industrial climate systems designed to protect ancient parchment. Yet the air felt thick, heavy with the realization of what lay on the display screen. Beneath his hands rested the physical folders retrieved from the vehicle only hours earlier. Beside them sat the Master Access Registry for the Royal Collections. The entries did not match. They were not even close. What began as a routine security stop in a sunlit courtyard had transformed within hours into a private forensic audit. Security officials stood in silence near the reinforced door as William personally reviewed the movement logs. The folders recovered from the rear compartment of the vehicle were supposed to be housed within climate-controlled, double-locked vaults beneath Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace. They contained sensitive operational schedules, private correspondence regarding internal royal restructures, and confidential briefings prepared for senior members of the institution. None of these documents were permitted to leave secure grounds without explicit written authorization signed by a designated keeper of the official records. Yet here they were, laid out on a table in front of the future king, far from where they belonged. William traced his finger down the digital ledger. The preliminary investigation revealed that these files had not been removed during the flurry of activity that morning. That was the first terrifying truth to emerge. The physical condition of the folders told a story of extended handling. The paper edges were worn. Several internal clips showed minor surface rust, indicating exposure to humidity outside archival storage. The materials had not been taken hours ago. They had been circulating outside protected channels for months. Internal security analysts were summoned under strict non-disclosure commands. They worked in absolute silence, cross-referencing entry keycard logs with closed-circuit camera feeds from the months leading up to the discovery. Every time a secure door clicked open, an electronic record was generated. Every time a sensitive file cabinet was unlocked, a physical ledger entry was required. The analysts began mapping the movement of the specific document numbers found in the vehicle. The results were disturbing. The papers had been systematically accessed during off-peak hours, often late at night or early in the morning when staffing levels were reduced to essential shifts. The investigation turned toward the personnel records. Who had been granted clearance to those specific vault rooms during those late-night hours?
I want to create a world in which my son is proud of what we do. In a world and a job that actually does impact people's lives for the better. I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda.
Investigators systematically interviewed senior archivists and security guards who had been on duty during the dates in question. The interviews took place in windowless offices, far removed from the public eye. Staff members were asked simple questions about key management, visitor entries, and unusual requests. A distinct pattern began to form. Several junior officers recalled moments when routine access protocols were bypassed under the assumption of higher authority. Verbal assurances had been offered. Familiarity had been leveraged. Individuals carrying out these removals had not broken locks or forced doors. They had walked through the front entrances, used valid credentials, and walked back out into the night carrying leather briefcases that no one thought to check. The realization settled in heavily. This was not a sudden act of curiosity or a simple administrative mistake made by a visiting family member. It was a methodical, quiet extraction that had operated in the shadows for a prolonged period. If you are still watching, comment where you are watching from, because this next discovery reportedly shocked even senior palace staff. Most people would turn a blind eye when those in power bend the rules, but if you truly care about integrity and justice, you owe it to yourself to stay until the end and share this story with everyone who deserves the truth. As investigators dug deeper into the archival access logs, they hit a sudden, unsettling obstacle. A massive gap in the security records was discovered. Between late November and early January, a period spanning several weeks, an entire section of the digital tracking log was missing. At first, technicians assumed it was a standard system glitch or a routine server migration error. But when physical security ledgers for those exact dates were requested from the archive vault, officers discovered that several pages had been carefully removed from the binding. Someone had intentionally created a blind spot. During this missing oversight period, major organizational reviews were taking place within the royal household. Key security updates were being implemented, and sensitive discussions regarding family patronages and administrative budgets were active. The timing of the record gap was far too precise to be accidental. Whoever engineered the removal of the tracking records knew exactly when the monitoring systems were undergoing scheduled maintenance. They knew precisely when guard rotations occurred, and they understood how to manipulate the administrative blind spots of the palace hierarchy. This major twist shifted the nature of the entire inquiry. The investigation was no longer just about retrieved folders or an uncleared vehicle at Clarence House. It was now an active internal security breach involving deliberate cover-ups inside the palace system itself. William called for a complete audit of all administrative permissions granted during that missing oversight period. Every temporary badge issued, every visitor pass printed, and every override command entered into the security network was subjected to microscopic scrutiny. Forensic digital experts worked through the night to reconstruct the corrupted data files, extracting hidden fragments from backup servers located in secondary royal facilities. Line by line, the erased registry was rebuilt. Names began to reappear on the digital terminal. Dates were re-established. Timestamps were locked back into their proper order. As the reconstructed records populated the screen, a chilling narrative unfolded. The unauthorized access was not executed by an external intruder or an unknown rogue technician. The digital footprint used to bypass protocol during the unmonitored window belonged to a trusted internal credential. Investigators focused on a single authorization entry logged at 3:45 in the morning during the height of the missing oversight period. The request had overridden standard vault restrictions to release the exact confidential folders later discovered in the vehicle. When analysts traced the specific badge identification number used to grant that high-level authorization, the room fell silent. The security credential did not belong to a member of the Central Royal Guard. It did not belong to the Sovereign Archive staff. The record pointed directly to a senior officer operating within the private household of Queen Camilla. A heavily annotated spreadsheet hit the mahogany table with a sharp thud that echoed off the high ceilings of the Kensington Palace briefing room. Prince William did not wait for the 4 senior aides present to sit down. He pointed directly to a column of timestamps highlighted in red. The investigation had blown far past the boundaries of a single vehicle inspection. Over the past 48 hours, forensic security teams had systematically cross-referenced 5 years of physical entrance logs, visitor manifests, and secure server requests across 3 separate royal residences. What they discovered was not an isolated mistake. It was a calculated, multi-year pattern. The digital footprints painted a disturbing picture. Dozens of highly sensitive documents had been systematically withdrawn from restricted archives over a period of 18 months. These were not public historical papers. They included confidential financial projections regarding royal estates, private security protocols for upcoming international tours, and sensitive background notes on internal family negotiations. Each withdrawal was precisely timed to coincide with major calendar shifts or moments when primary administrative staff were occupied elsewhere. The materials were taken in batches, held for brief periods, and then either returned out of order or replaced with photocopies to conceal their temporary absence. As the scope of the inquiry widened, panic began to ripple through the upper levels of palace management. Senior advisors gathered in urgent, hushed consultations inside offices. The tension inside the building was almost suffocating. A sharp division quickly formed among the monarch's inner circle. On one side stood veteran courtiers who urged immediate containment. They argued that exposing a full-scale security failure involving family connections would cause catastrophic institutional damage. They advocated for a quiet internal resolution, suggesting the materials be returned, administrative permissions silently revoked, and the entire incident buried under official confidentiality agreements. William flatly refused. To him, shielding influential individuals from standard security protocols was the very definition of institutional decay. He made it clear that family ties would not buy immunity, and that protecting public trust required absolute transparency, no matter who was implicated. The psychological toll of this stance weighed heavily on those involved. Staff members who had served the royal household for decades found themselves undergoing intense questioning by independent security consultants. Loyalty was tested. Long-standing professional relationships fractured under the weight of suspicion. The atmosphere inside the palace shifted from cautious concern to cold paranoia, with officers looking at colleagues wondering who else had turned a blind eye. If you choose to look the other way right now, you are enabling the very corruption that destroys public trust from the inside out. True supporters of truth and justice do not abandon the story when the reality gets uncomfortable. Take a moment to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video immediately, because walking away now proves you care more about protecting powerful names than uncovering the cold truth. As investigators dug deeper into the logistical chain of the document transfers, a critical breakthrough shattered the prevailing theory of the case. Up until this point, senior officials had assumed that Queen Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, had actively used his family standing to gain physical access to the secure vaults and remove the sensitive folders himself. That assumption was entirely wrong. Forensic analysis of the physical archive access doors, combined with keycard verification codes, revealed a completely different reality. Parker Bowles's personal security credentials had never been used to unlock the vault doors. His name did not appear on any of the late-night physical visitor logs at the Sovereign Archives. Instead, video evidence and digital audit logs confirmed that an insider with high-level clearance within the palace apparatus was doing the physical extraction. This individual was retrieving the restricted files directly from the vaults, bringing them to private offices, and then handing them off during routine social visits and informal meetings. Parker Bowles was not the person breaching the secure vaults. He was merely the end recipient of a steady stream of restricted information being fed to him from deep within the royal hierarchy. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigative team. The narrative had shifted from a simple case of unauthorized access to a far more dangerous dynamic, a deliberate inside operation functioning within the private household. If Parker Bowles was only receiving the documents on the outside, a far more chilling question immediately took over the entire investigation. Who inside the palace walls had been retrieving them for him all along? The heavy oak doors of the private drawing room clicked shut, locking out palace aides and security staff. Prince William stood by the window, staring into the rain-swept courtyard before turning to face Queen Camilla. The air in the room was dangerously still, charged with an intensity that decades of royal protocol could not soften. Emergency legal consultations had concluded only an hour earlier, with senior counsel warning that the breach could compromise institutional integrity if left unaddressed. William did not raise his voice. He did not engage in theatrical gestures. Instead, he placed a single red folder onto the polished coffee table between them, the physical evidence of an internal system compromised from within. The confrontation was sharp, silent, and deeply uncomfortable. William bypassed small talk entirely, presenting the timeline of authorization logs, security overrides, and document handoffs uncovered by forensic teams. The stakes extended far beyond personal relationships or family ties. The future monarch made it clear that institutional survival depended on complete transparency, demanding to know how restricted administrative records had been moved into private hands without triggering alerts. The psychological weight in the room was overwhelming as William posed one direct, unyielding question. Did she know about the unauthorized transfers taking place under her roof? Queen Camilla sat motionless, her expression guarded as she reviewed the evidence before her. Then came an admission that altered the entire course of the inquiry. Camilla confirmed that she had been aware of certain document requests, believing them to be routine historical materials and benign background papers intended for personal family projects. However, she firmly denied knowing the true nature, extreme sensitivity, or sheer volume of the restricted operational files that had actually been removed. She insisted that she had been kept in the dark regarding the deliberate bypass of security protocols, claiming her name and authority had been used as cover without her explicit consent. This revelation exposed a profound fracture within the palace structure. The internal safeguards designed to protect the monarchy had failed not because of an external threat, but because authority had been manipulated from within the inner circle. Yet, before the private dynamic between the senior royals could settle, the situation spun entirely out of control. Word of the secret investigation leaked to senior palace staff and external legal entities. Whispers of missing records and security breaches began circulating through restricted channels. The fragile boundary of silence shattered completely. What had started as a quiet, controlled internal review was now spilling out, making total containment impossible and setting off a chain reaction that no one inside the palace could stop. Camera flashes exploded like lightning against the damp pavement outside St. George's Chapel as Prince William and Queen Camilla walked side by side toward awaiting vehicles. Their synchronized movements were flawless, their expressions composed, projecting absolute unity to a ravenous international media pack. Television commentators analyzed every glance, every subtle tilt of the head, searching for fractured body language. Yet, while the world watched the polished public performance on live broadcasts, a quiet, merciless purge was already tearing through the administrative apparatus behind palace walls. The official investigation had formally reached its conclusion, but the internal fallout was swift and absolute. Operational access rights were instantly revoked across all royal properties. Senior staff members who had enabled or overlooked the unmonitored transfers were quietly pulled into closed offices, stripped of their security clearances, and instructed to hand in their credentials. There were no public press releases, no loud dismissals, and no televised announcements. Instead, veteran courtiers were placed on administrative leave or forced into immediate retirement, replaced by a fresh contingent of external security consultants directly accountable to the Prince of Wales. Digital locks across the sovereign archives were reprogrammed overnight. Physical vault keycards were destroyed in industrial shredders, and stringent double verification protocols were implemented for every historical file movement. William had chosen institutional accountability over personal or familial protection. He refused every plea from advisors who begged him to dilute the internal report. In the cold calculus of royal survival, he understood that shielding powerful names from standard protocols would destroy the very trust that kept the institution alive. If you choose to turn a blind eye to this channel right now, you are choosing comfort over the unsettling reality of how power operates behind closed doors. Ignoring the truth makes you complicit in the silence that protects the elite. Take a second to like, subscribe, and share this video right now, because walking away without standing up for total transparency proves you were never really paying attention in the first place. As the final forensic audit was being archived into secure servers, investigators stumbled upon a terrifying revelation buried deep within secondary data logs. The physical folders recovered from the rear compartment of the vehicle at Clarence House were not an isolated stash of private papers. They were merely a tiny fragment of a massive, interconnected network of unauthorized document movements that had operated continuously for years. The vehicle had never been the core of the scandal. It was simply the moment the secret operation made a fatal mistake. The true catastrophe was a deeply compromised system that allowed state secrets, confidential operational blueprints, international security itineraries, and sensitive financial restructures to flow silently into private hands without triggering a single automated alarm. The palace archives had been systematically drained from within, aided by trusted credentials and administrative blind spots that no one had thought to question. One haunting question remains locked inside the royal corridors, haunting senior security officials who were forced to rewrite the palace playbook. If a sharp-eyed royal guard had not noticed the subtle drop in a vehicle's suspension on that quiet morning, would anyone have ever realized that the crown's most sensitive secrets were already gone? Do not turn away just yet, because the story does not end inside the sovereign archives. In our next investigation, we uncover an even bigger breakthrough. An unredacted audio recording secretly taped during that private meeting inside Clarence House has reportedly just been leaked to independent investigators. Next time, you will hear the exact 7-word warning Prince William delivered to Queen Camilla right before the security teams moved in. You cannot afford to miss what is coming next, so stay tuned.